Hello and welcome to the Work Inspired podcast. Since March of 2020, when we kicked off this show, we've had the privilege of interviewing over 100 influential and successful business leaders from a wide variety of industries, roles, and company sizes. If you're a new listener, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to some of those episodes, as there's a lot to learn, some great perspectives, and we had a lot of fun. In 2025, I'd like to introduce a new host for the show. Kimberly Sullivan is part of the leadership team at BOS. She's going to pick up the torch and continue the conversation.
Thank you, George. Excited to continue with our first podcast of the season with Patrick Russo. He is the Executive Managing Director and partner with Stream Realty. We're going to be talking today about the culture, brand, and his thoughts and ideas about Chicagoland.
Work Inspired starts right now.
Patrick, thanks so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah.
So the question we ask every guest in the beginning is, tell us your professional story.
So it all started, I guess, for me post-grad 2006. The world was a little bit different then. I actually studied accounting at Michigan State in the undergrad business school. I really didn't like accounting that much.
No.
But I knew it would be a great foundational degree for business. I think the one thing I knew coming out of undergrad is that I wanted to somehow be in the business world. Okay. Now, to what degree and in what specific field, I wasn't sure yet. So I got some good advice from a few family friends, my parents who were in consulting and, financial analysis, planning, things like that accounting, you can kind of do a lot with it. So Michigan State's undergrad business school, a great degree program, fought my way through it, and then ended up landing at an incredible firm, Blackman Callick, here in Chicago. I had interned in Chicago in between my junior and senior year and just fell in love with the city. And, I grew up in suburban Detroit. So being a Midwesterner, it felt kind of like home, definitely scarier and bigger, but also a lot more fun. Great place to live as a 20-something. And so I dove in, head first and never really looked back. From there, I was in Blackman Callick for a couple of years. It's an audit tax consulting firm. So I was doing audit and consulting. And I really got exposed to a number of different clients, which was kind of part of the plan. I had some incredible mentors there at a young age. I got to see, publicly traded insurance companies on the property and casualty side in Florida, which was wild, reviewing claims and things like that during hurricanes. I got to work on a few consulting firms, a few private equity firms, general contractors, nonprofits. Really, I actually did an audit at a McDonald's bun manufacturer that just sits on the south side here that ends up, they actually, is like their claim to fame was like, if you've had a Big Mac in the last 20 years in the Midwest or even longer than that, like that was our bun. So, it was a good mix of interesting things. And after a couple of years, I was pretty set on getting into real estate. I had been exposed to a few different clients who specialized in either building or investing. Transactions fascinated me. Not only the size that they can be from a dollar perspective and capital amount, but also just some of the complexity, or in some cases, the simplicity of the transaction was kind of invigorating and exciting to me. I also love that it was a very clear, like back then even, people would say it's a people business, very much sales forward. And I always felt, no disrespect to my friends in accounting, but always felt a little more maybe like a fish out of water there with most, a little more talkative, outgoing, extroverted. And so if I could use my financial skills to get into a real estate role that may put me in a forward, more sales position, that would work. And then I ended up making the maybe not so wise decision to get out of my safe accounting job in 2008. So it was the beginning of the great financial crisis. I remember my parents were definitely questioning my decision to jump headfirst into real estate as the world was burning down. I ended up, again, relying on my network and leveraging the few people I knew in our business, most of them that are still in our business today in Chicago, who said, hey, if you want to get in our business, brokerage firms and principal firms and developers, they're not hiring right now. You can read the headlines. So find any job in commercial real estate that is somewhat associated. But when I was interviewing, I ended up interviewing in a position for Nielsen, the media ratings company, which even then I was like, well, you're not in real estate, and they're not in the business of real estate. They never were. But as a big tenant internationally and globally, they in fact had quite a bit of real estate exposure from predominantly their leased office space. And so I took a position as a senior financial analyst within their newly formed global real estate group. And it was a really cool gig during the downturn from, 2008 to 2011. And I got to dig into their 700 plus global leases. Back then, that was kind of, the beginnings of the sort of reduce headcount exercise, which is not exciting. That's actually what inevitably kind of made me want to get on the actual side of commercial real estate. But I got to learn the basics of a financial transaction with a lease, capital improvement projects, got to dispose of a few assets that were actually owned, which was kind of odd that a company of that size owned real estate internationally. And I got exposure into private equity, where that firm had been purchased by some big private equity firms pre-GFC, and they were in the process of trying to take it public. A lot of times that results in, where can we trim the fat? How can we improve EBITDA? And inevitably take it out for IPO, which they did in 2011. So, that was cool. I got to see part of that process. I got to learn a few things and realize again, like, all right, where do I want to go? How do I get there? And so as the market softened, thankfully or actually improved in 2011, I got back out in the market. I always felt a little behind the eight ball at that point, because by then I was in my, later 20s, I suppose. And I went back to market to look for roles. And it was like, oh, well, you don't exactly have the pedigree we're looking for. Do you want to hire a 26 or 27-year-old, professional who's got some good experience adjacent to commercial real estate? Most recently, the current role is within real estate, but started with accounting. Or do I want to pay a little less for someone right out of undergrad? And so I think that was also part of my story. And I'm sharing that because maybe it put a chip on my shoulder a little bit, where I felt a little more competitive. And it was like this, just give me a shot, I'll prove it type of mentality. That's translated into me finding ways to really pay that forward, because I got that shot to directly work on the principal side at Lincoln Property Company in 2011. Awesome role, great people. Worked on a small team there doing acquisitions and asset management. I started as an analyst there, supporting LPC Midwest, which is the local operating entity for Lincoln on the commercial side, so office, industrial, retail. And then I worked for one of our separate account clients, predominantly Illinois teachers, retirement system. So helped them place capital with our portfolio manager around the country. And by the end of my time there, it was great timing in the market from 2011 to 19. You saw pretty much anybody who invested in especially commercial office, you did pretty well.
Yeah.
If you made some mistakes, you make mistakes, but not significant losers during that cycle. So we had some great success. By the end of my time, I was kind of covering the central region of the country for that separate account. So got to know Chicago market, Nashville, all the Texas markets. And then I was actually covering LA, which was fun in the winter, go visit some assets and do some site tours. So I got introduced to one of the co-founders of Realty Partners in the winter of 2019. It was complete luck or
serendipity.
Maybe. I was at a lunch catching up with a friend of mine who worked at a real estate private equity firm here almost 6 years ago. It was in January of 19. We were both, early to mid 30s, starting young families, like what's next? Where do we go from here? I feel like we have such a great platform. We've got good people, and, what's next? How do we turn the volume up, and how do we amplify what some of our other markets are doing, but do it locally? And, Chicago's a tough market. So at that point, I had determined, for me and my family, my wife and I had decided we wanted to plant a flag here. My wife's from the East Coast in Philly. We met here. I'm from Detroit area.
Sure.
And we wanted to lay down some roots in Chicago. Like it's an incredible big city. It's the hub of the Midwest, and people on the coast often forget it's the third largest city in the country. It shocks me how many times I have to remind people that when I go visit my in-laws. But kind of on a whim, my friend was like, "Do you know the folks at Stream?" And I had interacted with Stream a little bit in covering the Texas markets for that separate account client. I was like, "Look, I know who they are, but I don't know much about them." And so he was like, "Look, I know you should talk to them. They're looking for people up here. They want to grow the platform. And candidly, they're kind of looking for folks like you, like, aggressive, excited about the city." And I was like, "Well, who do you know?" And he's like, "Well, I know the co-founder." And I was like, I'll take that call. So, that seemed like a good one.
Yeah.
And Mike McVean and I, dare I say, we kind of hit it off. I'll never forget our first conversation. I was sitting under the L in the Loop, and we talked for, I think, a while, like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Under the L?
Yeah, well, I was in my car. But,
okay, good.
I remember the L going by, and he was like, "Where
every
are
5
you?"
minutes,
And Mike's got a good Texas accent, so I'll spare you the impression. It's like, "Hey, look, I'd love to keep the conversation going." And fast forward, I was signed up and started in June of 19.
In June of 19,
and the mission was, we've got a little outpost in Rosemont. The first employee in Chicago for Stream and the first, people here, boots on the ground, was actually in 2016. My partner, Victoria Knudsen, came over from Cushman & Wakefield to lead, where she led industrial property management nationally, to do the same for Stream, but from Chicago. So she's an industrial pro by her background. When I showed up, she was a big part of me joining the firm. I was really excited to work with her. Her and I hit it off as well, and good, partnership and different knowledge and background. And so we had that industrial presence on the PM side. We had a couple people working out there, and it was like, all right, let's grow the transaction business. Let's get brokerage going. Let's get investments and development going, which is a big part of what we do. And so that was my mission. I happened to be living downtown, so I wanted to be able to be downtown. And most of my background was as an office professional. So makes more sense to be downtown. So we opened up a little satellite office. That was a great home for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to Stream.
Okay.
So,
well, you talked about Stream. So tell us what makes Stream different or unique.
Our people, top to bottom, get asked that question. I think it's that. I think it's our people.
Okay.
I really believe that we give people an ability to not have a dedicated roadmap, to really be able to do multiple things if they desire. Now, there's a key to that. You have to be really good at your day job, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're being hired as an accountant, be the best accountant you can be.
Sure.
If you're being a broker, be the best broker. But if you want to learn other things or feed other business lines or services within the platform, we encourage it. I mean, when Marissa and I were coming over here, we were talking about an employee on our team who is not in the role of business development, but is getting 2 referral bonuses this month for sourcing not only an employee who we're hiring, but also some property management business. That is encouraged. We preach that. It's not like, I remember in whatever role I had before coming to Stream, it always felt like it was like, look, if you want to go try and win business, like give it a go.
Yeah.
Like good for you. But no one's expecting you to do that.
Sure.
And the vibe is similar. Like we don't expect anybody to do it, but we talk about it and we encourage it. And we say like, we want to pay you for it. That's part of it, is empowerment of our people, and having the autonomy to make decisions, to create, to bring ideas to the table. And that really starts with our leadership. I feel incredibly empowered and autonomous within the organization as the leader of the Chicago market, in being able to provide that similar, opportunity to all of our people in Chicago. And then secondly, how we're different. We're a full service operator and service provider, where when you look at the size and scale at which we have third-party business, so that's mostly on the brokerage and property management and construction management side, but we also have an incredibly robust investment and development platform. a lot of our competitors would say, oh, there's so much conflict in that. But, you really peel back the onion and like most big firms are in both spaces.
Sure.
So we just talk about it a little bit more openly and together.
Yeah.
We are being able to integrate those two things that have so long been seen as potentially competitive, but like, to my knowledge, if you actually reel back the tape on most commercial markets, the original developers were brokers themselves.
Absolutely.
And somehow that all got separated.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, you have to be a broker, just a broker. You can't develop a building because you'll compete with me.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want your broker empowered with the most knowledge of the market, or do you want them to only focus on your building? That's your choice as the owner. But personally, I think that when employees, whether it's a broker or anything else, are empowered to learn as much as possible, you end up getting a better, well-rounded professional who understands the actual marketplace.
We talked a little bit about kind of the culture, right? People and diversification. Would you say that brand, culture, generational differences, does that have some play in this marketplace with what you do and even to your spaces and the spaces you create and the buildings that you guys operate? And also, how does that differentiate by the generations?
I want to say that our marketing team would back me up here, that I am a brand junkie. And that I want us to be thoughtful about consistency, color, theme, our people, what type of assets we're putting out on our marketing, whether it's social media, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. And I think that was a big part of our effort to build collectively over the last few years in Chicago. We had really candidly like a sleeping giant platform. When I really started to look at, and I think everyone on our team would agree with this, on like, okay, all right, let me go spend some time down in Texas and see what these stream folks are all about. It was pretty overwhelming.
Okay.
Big company, big brand, doing big business with the biggest, landlords, service providers, like you name it, like they were in the game. And so we all really up here, I think, caught stream at the right time and vice versa. You had the end of a cycle collectively barreling down at us across the country and the world in 2019. And then you had a brand and a company in Stream that historically, actually, if you go back to the last downturn, that's when our colleagues in Texas decided to expand. It wasn't in the good times. We actually, I believe, opened up our first office outside of Texas in the GFC. So, and that was similar to up here. It was following talent. It was like, we're not going to post a position in a new market or just send someone from our other markets up to a new place. We're going to hire locally, but we're going to hire it with exceptional talent. We're going to find the right person, and we'll put the role around them. And I think that's how we've continued to try and hire. So brand's super important to us. I think we had a moment also when you looked at the landscape competitively in some of our core business units. So just to frame that for you, or office, industrial, data center, and retail experts. Office and industrial are really our bread and butter. Where almost every of our 17 markets that we're in today with boots on the ground, operational offices, office and industrial is the core. Data centers is more driven by corporate entity, where those leaders and that whole team, they sit around the country, and we have operational data centers in Chicagoland in Elk Grove Village. But, those decisions are all predominantly made in our headquarters in Dallas. And then retail, it's just hasn't been as much of a focus. We have some markets that have great retail, brokers and managers and maybe even investments, but office and industrial is our core. And then it's brokerage, both agency, which is landlord representation, tenant representation, and then property management, construction management, and development management services on the third party side. We had the ability to take those different service lines and mirror them up and say, like, what's the competitive landscape and who can we go get? Well, Chicago on the office side, if you look back at the brokerage world on the third party landlord side, which is really where I saw myself fitting in as someone coming from the landlord acquisition and asset management side who wanted to do more brokerage. Historically, over the last, 20-ish plus years, there's been significant smaller firms that aren't the big brand names that are publicly traded, as we call them, respectfully. They're our friends. Like, the acronym firms, you all know them.
Yeah.
For whatever reason in Chicago, there had been a couple smaller firms that had dominated or highly competed on the agencies world. So it was like, okay, the landlords already are used to this. Why can't we be a part of that market share? And thankfully, our thesis was correct. We ended up being able to bring on some incredible talent and build up quite a portfolio in the agency world. And so that brand opportunity that we all had when we got together those first few years was significant. We put a lot of thought behind, everything from like, what's our little picture on Instagram? What colors do we want to send when we send swag? Is it the traditional stream blue?
Yeah.
Or should we just do something black? Because maybe black's a little more edgy. It's my national marketing. Are you okay with that? No, we're not okay with it. Well, we're going to do it anyways. And, that's, and we did a few of those things where our national folks kind of let us sort of create our own identity within the platform. We are Stream Realty Partners without a doubt, but I think each of our markets has a little special, flair to it. And I think that's part of the fun. And generationally, it was like, oh, wow, like what you mean to tell me you started a market for Stream when you were 27?
Yeah.
27. I mean, I was competing with kids from Wisconsin when I was 27 that were coming out of undergrad. And I think that also made it feel like, all right, wait, this is that empowerment that they talk about. This is the chance to be able to try, to take a risk, to step out on a limb and say, I'm betting on me and the couple people by my side.
Do you find that you apply some of your ideas of brand culture and generational differences when you're looking at your customers?
I think if you looked at the background of our team and to start there, most of us are Midwestern. So, we've got people from Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin. But I think a lot of us came to Chicago to make this home.
Sure.
To be in the biggest city in the Midwest, because we love it here. Like, I'm not just trying to sound like, a crazy person, but like, I'm excited it's kind of cold out.
Yeah.
Like, it's fun to have sweater season and get cozy. Now, January, February, we don't need to talk about that right now because it's pre-Christmas and the holiday season right now.
Absolutely.
So everyone's feeling all excited.
Yeah.
But, I think that was important to us, was to be able to come together and build something. Now, how we select our clients, I wouldn't say it's necessarily based on generation. We can work with anybody that's looking for best-in-class real estate services. We will be thoughtful, though, about the staffing of maybe those assignments.
Sure.
Like, there's always going to be certain people that go work better together, regardless of background, demographic, or age. But we try to be extra thoughtful about how we staff assignments. It is really fun when we have a client who loves Chicago as much as we do.
Yeah.
So, I think we're constantly trying to be spokesmen and women for the city and for the greater Midwest.
Well, you represent some really amazing places downtown. We're in one right now,
yeah,
right?
We're in one. Absolutely. Yeah. It's hard to get more grand than the Merchandise Mart, or the Mart, as we call it.
Yeah.
So, incredibly thankful for this opportunity. We got the chance to work on this when, a big team joined us from another firm, and they had an incredible relationship with the owner. And thankfully that owner believed in us, right? Because it's a people business. It was less about, and I'm smart enough to know this, like, it was less about the Stream brand. It was the people. They followed the people. So we had the talent, and that's what they wanted. And as long as we could deliver the same, and I think we're delivering a better level of platform level service, then it's not that hard of a decision.
Yeah. Well, let's lean into that a little bit. Customers and employees are looking for new experiences, incredible experiences.
Yeah.
What would make you guys incredible?
I think there's a certain level of touch that we can bring to an assignment. There's very limited red tape with a firm like us. I think we can make quick decisions for our clients in the toughest of times. And we've proven that the last couple of years, putting our own money on the line first if we have to in order to service them appropriately. And we don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to do that. When it comes to spending, or, say a marketing budget gets cut for a certain assignment, but we need to market to do our jobs in almost all cases. because we're not, typically service providers at a high level and core product don't go hand in hand, because core product's almost always 100% leased, no matter what the asset class. So there isn't a ton of service that needs to happen. So most of what we do is more in the value add category. Well, value add needs to be operated appropriately at a high level of service. And so how do we go about doing that? Well, we staff accordingly. We match the best people with the people on the decision maker seat or the day-to-day with our clients. And also we base it off of what the building needs. And so if a marketing budget gets cut and we have to step in, it's as quick as one of our teammates coming to me and whoever the other service line leader is. And maybe it has to go up to our CEO or co-founders, but like, you're talking about maybe 2 rings if it's a significant expense of approval.
Yeah.
But in most cases, it doesn't leave the local market, because we actually have ownership and control in our local P&L and balance sheet. That's one of the bigger differences,
That's
I think,
amazing.
is that we try to really incentivize our people to feel like owners, because we are.
Yeah.
We're a firm of 1,500 plus people, and there's like 30 partners in the firm and a few others that have ownership interests. So it's not that big of an organization, but we can flex up because of that creativity and that autonomy that I've talked about, and the flatness of the organization to make quicker decisions, better and more creative, to step outside the box and do something different. So I think that's how we're servicing our clients better. From an overall experience standpoint, I think that same principles trickle down to that, whether it's us designing, incredibly creative spaces with, we can work with anybody, right? Like, we're going to make recommendations to our clients on who we think is the best creative solution for architecture and design, general contracting. Is it a client that can do union or non-union, right? Like, that can depend on who you select from a vendor perspective, and having key relationships with folks like you all, that's important for us.
So you focus mainly on office space,
Me?
right? Because kind of your bread and butter, more office, less industrial.
No, I think I do a little bit of everything at this point.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, I think I need to lean into that. I think even as I'm sitting here, I've always kind of hesitated to say that, but I know enough about a lot to be relatively dangerous, I think, and to certainly be helpful on multiple service lines and product types. My background is predominantly office. I'd say I feel very confident in my industrial knowledge locally, and we have had some success locally on the industrial side. And so I think it's probably those 2 product types that I really spend most of my time on. So, but to give you an example of who we are in Chicago, we're 60 professionals now. Starting again from when I showed up, and it was Victoria and a couple others, let's say maybe 5 or 6. There's 2 people left from when I joined that are still here.
Oh wow!
So and so we've grown a lot.
Yeah.
In a tough market, and so we've got a very robust property management and brokerage business, all third party locally. So we lease and manage about 42 million feet in Chicagoland. 25 million of that is third party agency, landlord rep on the office side, all downtown. And then we have about 17 million feet of third party property management. A little over 14 million of that is industrial all throughout Chicagoland. And then the remaining, 2.5 to 3 is downtown and a couple suburban office property management assignments. So when you look at what I would consider our foundation of where we need to grow, we're missing. Oh, and we have, how could I forget? We have a 9-person tenant rep team that's doing office and industrial on a national basis. So we need to grow our local industrial brokerage business. And then we need to continue to grow our office property management business. That's really going to be the foundational side of what we're looking to form in the next few years and continue growing. And then we've started to make some investments in Chicago. So that's been exciting as well. Going back to your initial question here, I think it was around like what I do.
Yes.
And I took it to the team. So I try and participate in as many of those things as possible. I think that one of the best ways to lead is to lead through productivity. and to produce yourself. That's one thing that attracted me to Stream, is that the leaders are expected to also be procuring business, producing business. And, I think that's fun. A lot of people would make comments on the player coach model, maybe not being effective, but I think it's working for us and we're having fun doing it.
Absolutely.
So, I'm still on a few downtown office listings with a couple partners, but, I'm helping lead the vision and the business overall. And so I would say it's probably office agency, and then also helping build those businesses, PM and industrial brokerage that I referenced. That's some of my main focus right now.
So let's talk about what you're seeing out there, right? Things have changed, obviously, and change has a lot of opportunity. It sounds like 60 people is a big opportunity of change from 2019, kind of at the beginning of all the chaos that just recently happened.
Yeah.
What would you guys say you do to innovate, or what change have you seen in kind of the downtown office / suburban industrial model?
When I was less than a year in and the pandemic hit, and I had really come here to start an office brokerage business. I had a 1-year-old, and those were scary times.
Sure.
Dare I say dark days. There's a level of grit that maybe at least it overcame me. Maybe it's my Detroit roots, but I think that, the market couldn't have been worse for most of our beginnings on the office side. And I'm pleasantly surprised with the way 24 has gone. We've seen increased transaction volume in our portfolio and also downtown. The market overall is still at all-time high from a vacancy perspective, but when you dive in and drill down on that, sublet vacancies come down significantly, right? There's a couple of factors that go into that. There's less tire kicking, tenants who are just like, hey, let me see if anyone bites on my space. Let's get it off the books. And also a lot of that sublet vacancy has been leased over the last few years. It's spiked right in 20 and 21, and you've seen it come down significantly. So that's obviously encouraging. And let's keep in perspective that pre-pandemic, Chicago was at like all-time low downtown office vacancy.
Yeah.
So like we were going from some of the best times ever to, a global pandemic. This is the time when a lot of people, just depending on the time in their career, right? Whether they're in ownership side or brokerage, it's like, this is too much. This is too stressful. I'm out.
Yeah.
And, that's fine. And I think that's part of a natural cycle of a market. Absolutely. And so those who are able to hang through this time, I believe, will reap the benefits. And so, and most importantly, like, there is a need for great service providers right now. Like, never more than now is there a need for those who want to actually make the real estate experience better. It's pretty simple. Like, we all have friends and family who are like, I'm never going back to the office. And we've all probably said, like, makes sense. Yeah. If that works for you, good. If that works for your company, great. Obviously, I don't believe that. I'm obviously a proponent of office. I think that was one of our benefits during the pandemic, is we were small and nimble. We only had, in 2020, we maybe had like 12, 15 people. Sure. So, it wasn't hard to keep tabs on everybody. Yeah. We were in a bubble. Yeah. And it was like, okay, you're in the bubble. In this bubble, we are still hunting for business. So we are taking in-person meetings. If you're comfortable with it, if you're not comfortable with it, that's fine. Yep. We'll do it. Yeah. We were getting meetings when a lot of people were just on the sidelines. Like, there was still owners that needed people to do tours and keep the lights on and clean the toilets and all the things. Because with the exception of March to, I think it was like June or July of that year, right? Right after that, we were back at it. Because, we're purveyors of office space. And so, like, hey, we gotta practice what we preach. And, my wife would have some other comments for you about whether that was the right decision. But
we had a 1-year-old at that time, right?
So thankfully, look, we were safe. We were masked up. We had a lot of hand sanitizer. And there were certain things not happening, right? But I think we stayed active during that time. And we were able to really generate a culture of hustle and I think grit. I don't use that word enough. It might be my Detroit Lions theme that they're going for right now.
You're a Lions fan?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
Why?
I'm a Bears fan, which is probably even worse right now.
I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, after that last game.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. No, we're doing good.
Yeah.
So
you guys might make it to the Super Bowl.
yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to jinx it, but
Okay.
I think that created a little internal culture and mantra, and it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
It was happening in our other markets.
Yeah.
So, I think we've been able to bring that to the table too, where we can create a plan for our client based on the needs and have it very curated. And I think we're local experts, and we really value that. We want our people to love Chicago. And that's one of the biggest interview questions I have is like, if it's someone not from here, it's like, well, why do you want to be here? And then they give the reason. It's like, all right, well, do you think you would want to do you want a family? And if the answer is yes, it's like, well, would you want to raise a family here? If you don't want a family, well, would you want to grow old here?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but we could snowbird in the winter.
Yeah.
But we want people who want to love it here and who want to make a difference because I think that a new generation of leadership is important for a major metropolitan area, whether you're just a commercial real estate person like we are, which, we can only do so much. Like we're not politicians, but I think we represent a lot of what cities are known for, right? Like when you think of cities, what do you think of? You think of a skyline.
Absolutely.
You think of the food.
Yeah.
You think of your friends and family that are there. And I think, tangentially, and maybe this is a stretch, but, we're maybe a little bit part of that skyline. We're helping fill up the skyline, keep the lights on in the skyline. I think we do have an obligation to those that came before us and, the future.
Have things changed, right? What have you seen change recently in downtown that is unique and fun and innovative? And
well, I think you've got more people being able to make decisions on when and how they come back.
Okay.
Right? Like that was a big part of the confusion, in 21, 22, and 23 is there just weren't, the mandates that you're seeing from major employers now. But even on a smaller scale, when there isn't a mandate, there wasn't even necessarily an operating plan of what to do or how to do it. So a lot of people, I feel like, defaulted to, let's just be as flexible as possible, keep people, keep them happy. This has been a crazy time for a lot of folks. And, we're not seeing a significant dip in productivity. And, as long as revenue was staying up and earnings were there and NOI was there, then let's not rock the boat. But I think as a lot of, especially on the office side, tenants have reached that natural expiration of deals that were cut in the last 10 years, because most commercial leases are 5 to 10 years on the office side. They've had a decision to make, and that's forced people to understand how they bring people back. And that is translated into how we deliver the best value for the end user that is coming back. And maybe in some cases, and probably a lot, begrudgingly coming back to the office, 2 to 3 days a week.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, is this the same old office that I remember? Is it, random water cooler talk with that one colleague? Or, and if you're not a fan of The Office, then maybe you don't see the humor in those types of things. But I personally loved that part of going to the office. And I'm not just saying that because that's my job. Like, those were my family. Like, those are the people that I'm spending more time with usually during the week than sometimes my kids. But you got to make the most of it. And it's like, not everyone can be an influencer and work remotely, and there's certainly been a rise in that. And I think that's wonderful, but there are plenty of working Americans that still need to clock in and clock out, whether that's a manufacturing job or that's an office job. And so commercial office isn't going away. It's dramatically changing. It's refocusing, and it needs to be better. That's what we all have learned is like, it has to be better. We have to deliver a better result or there's no point. And that COVID just sped that up, right? Like we were heading that way.
Yeah.
And so
it was an accelerant for sure.
That's exactly right. And on the industrial side, look, like the pandemic, I didn't touch on that earlier, but I mean, it sent the industrial market through the roof. It was white hot from 20 to 23, honestly. And then they finally started to slow down only because predominantly in some markets, there was an oversupply. developers wanted to build buildings because everybody wanted to lease more space for logistics, 3PL, predominantly driving that was less manufacturing, but we all needed our goods. We all didn't want to go in hazmat suits to the grocery store. And so that results in increased logistical need, more warehouse space for goods, quicker, faster, sooner. And so, that has started to slow down a little bit. Thankfully, supply has started to regulate a little bit. Like in Chicago, sometime in Q4 of 21, Q1 22, there was 20 million feet in the pipeline for industrial development in Chicago's 1.4 billion square foot market. Single largest industrial market in the entire country, by the way. We were in a better place than a lot of other major industrial hubs from a supply standpoint. So thankfully, that's come down significantly in the last couple of years. And because of rising interest rates, developers like ourselves, we haven't necessarily had the justification or the market fundamentals to go spec a ground up construction site.
Yeah. You mentioned, city and suburbs.
Yeah.
I think when the pandemic happened, we all kind of thought, the city's going to empty out. We're all going to move out to the suburbs. We're going to be in big business out there, right, type of thing. And I really don't know that has happened with that type of ferocity. Would you think that, what's your opinion, city versus suburbs and how the trends are developing?
Look, I've since moved to a suburban community.
Yeah.
And so and my wife yesterday I was laughing today with a colleague that I went and saw a matinee yesterday, and it was luxurious. Having two kids under 6. Hadn't done that in a while.
Moana 2.
And as we were walking, no, I wish. Gladiator 2.
Oh, okay.
Not sure how I talked my wife into that, but she liked it. As we were walking in, she was like, do you remember when you were like, I'm city guy, I'm never leaving the city, and saying how nice it was? What are the differences? I think you're talking about the hub and spoke model that a lot of people were preaching. The bottom line is it all begins and ends for me with, new jobs and new people moving to the city, right? Whatever city.
Yeah.
And some cities have been able in the last 15 years to rely on inbound migration from other markets.
Sure.
A lot of those we've read about, those are in the Sun Belt, places like Nashville, certainly the Texas markets like Austin and Dallas, Atlanta to a degree, the Carolinas, right? Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, a lot of inbound population growth from the north specifically and from California. But what do we have, right? We have the Big Ten. This is the home of the Big Ten, first off. And the Big Ten is now growing, so, while do I think we're going to get a bunch of kids from Southern California who are at UCLA and USC? Probably not.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
But, I think if you look at the original Big Ten or like the 11 or whatever 14 teams it was for a couple of years before we got to the coast, that is the heartbeat of this city, in my opinion, is not only the local incredible universities that we have between Northwestern, U Chicago, DePaul, Roosevelt. I mean, just incredible local educational opportunities for Chicagoans. And that creates new people every year moving to our city. And I think it's easy to overlook that for a lot of people on the coast, or if you're writing an article about the demise of Illinois and population, growth and how there isn't any. And when you really, again, when you peel it back and you look at the actual data, there are zip codes downtown that have seen tremendous population growth over the last 10 to 15 years in between censuses. And so I think that's something that I always felt would debunk the whole hub and spoke idea, because you're not going to get somebody from Columbus or Indianapolis or Detroit from the suburbs, or whether you went to Michigan State, Indiana, Ohio State, to be like, I'm so excited to move to, wait for it, Schaumburg. And nothing against Schaumburg, but you stack up, Schaumburg's great, but Schaumburg or Chicago,
You're going to
Chicago. Like, what are we talking about? And so now you're all going to probably end up in the suburbs. That's the funny thing. We're all on just one big hamster wheel.
Yeah.
But, I think that alone is what I always saw as the backbone or backstop of the downtown market and its ability to rebound over time. Now, it's it's been a tough couple of years.
Yeah.
And we're not even close to where we were.
Mhm.
And it's going to take more time. But I still believe in some of the suburban nodes that have always been the great suburban hubs of office. Predominantly, like the East-West corridor. That includes like Oak Brook.
Sure. Yeah.
The Rosemont submarket, its proximity to O'Hare, as well as connection to the L and the Blue Line. And then the North Shore, like Deerfield's a great office market. And Northbrook as well. And so I think you saw some people move their offices. And most of us in our business, we do have 2 offices, downtown and suburban.
Yeah.
So like it didn't really feel like that revolutionary of an idea.
Sure. Yeah.
Because, what we were really experiencing in the last cycle was all of our major Fortune 500 firms, which I think in 19, we still had close to 38 or 39 in Chicago that called Chicago HQ. That's down to the mid 30s now. We have lost a couple, but we've picked up a couple others. And so that ability to be able to attract talent and attract those recent grads required people to move office and create a tech office, sometimes they called it, because like that was more appealing to 20 somethings, like tech office, even though you weren't a tech company, like that's gone. And thankfully the terrible like pre-pandemic bench seating is gone. And we've got slightly more spacious rows. Maybe it's instead of a 4-foot desk or a 5-foot desk, you got 6-foot benching with a little more coverage, so as we plan spaces on the office side in particular, we try to be thoughtful about what people are looking for today. And more people are kind of going more towards like the beginning of the last cycle. We're not seeing full exterior build spec suites, but if we're doing multiple spec suites on a floor and we're planning, we might plan one that has all exterior offices. Yeah. Which some people a couple of years ago would be like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? This isn't for a law firm. Yeah. I think those are all positive trends that we're seeing.
Are you seeing a lot of home being brought into the office?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think the more people can feel comfortable, an overused term in our industry has been hospitality-focused amenities. But it's for a reason. Like it kind of hits the nail on the head. Yeah. Like there's nothing better than when you're at just an incredible resort or an incredible hotel and you stay for a couple nights more than a weekend and you're like, oh, I could get used to this. Yeah. Being able to bring that level of service and attentiveness to an office, it isn't that revolutionary. It's a little more expensive for the operator and then the owner, but inevitably gets passed back to the tenants. And so, if it's what people want, that's what we need to be delivering.
We're going to shift up a little bit more to you. What resource has been valuable to you in your career that you would recommend to others?
I think finding really good mentors.
Okay.
Has been quite an advantage for me. I've been lucky. Yeah. In each of my positions that I've been at, each firm, even if it was unspoken, but to feel like I had someone I could go to, whether that was a peer or it was someone at a senior level, to bounce ideas off of. Sure. Ask, stupid questions, quote unquote, and just, have a free thought with. But also, at least for me, like I'm someone who learns from communication, specifically talking. And so, I like to talk things out. I like to, create that way, understand that way. And so having a person or multiple people to be able to do that with in a trusted environment has been really beneficial. So I would say like, find a way to surround yourself with people who will help you, look out for you, support you, and what you want to achieve. Because, you might not need to, be much more than your current role, but you might want to maintain that current role. And so how do I maintain it and kind of finding people to help you do that, I think is critical to success, especially for those that are younger, right? And maybe they have been operating predominantly on Zoom or Teams, right? And I think personally, I could probably have a mentor via Teams. It's a little more inconvenient, as we all know, to schedule around that as opposed to the the impromptu water cooler talk, quote
Yeah.
unquote, if you will, or just passing by in the office. Hey, do you have a couple minutes? And so, I think that's been really helpful for me. The other thing is I would say take risk.
Take risk.
Yeah. I think that it's important, no matter what your goals are, to believe in yourself.
Mhm.
Okay. Like, that's not an original thought. I think that having confidence in oneself, no matter what the end goal, is important. And if you can find a way to make strategic risks or bets on the decisions that you think will get you to your end goal, I think you would benefit from that. A lot of that is derived from maybe my upbringing, where, I saw my parents work really hard, do well for themselves. I can't speak to other industries. Like I can't advise like a doctor on career success, but,
but in your career,
as it relates to, business professionals, I think taking risk on yourself is important if it's strategic and feels like the right time.
Yeah.
No matter what the time too. I think a lot of people are like, oh, you got to do that while you're young. It's like, everybody's different. Like, why couldn't somebody step out on their own in their 50s or 60s?
Yeah.
Why does that matter? If they're financially stable and they can make a bet, or even if they're not, like, that's up to them.
Absolutely.
And I think that's exciting.
What is something you're excited about in the next 12 months, either professionally or personally?
Well, I'm definitely excited about my third kid that's on the way.
Very exciting.
So that's exciting. I'm really excited to see our continued growth and the rebound, hopefully, of the overall markets.
Sure.
When I speak of markets, I'm obviously talking about the commercial real estate market. I'm excited to see, our downtown continue to improve, more businesses to come back to work. I hope that our retail flourishes, and it brings more tourism back to the city. And I'm excited for Stream's continued growth. We're not done. I think we've often said like we're just getting started, and we still feel that way. Very much so. And there's a lot more to be done, and I hope that we can continue to prove to our clients and more people that we can be your best choice for a full service operator, who can deliver great results and build our business.
Well, I think you sold me today, especially with your grit.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's good.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate our show. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Work Inspired podcast so that you don't miss any of the incredible guests we have planned for upcoming episodes. We'll continue to find the best and brightest minds in business so that you can learn, grow, and succeed, and so that we can all work inspired. Work Inspired is brought to you by BOS, a leader in commercial working environments and a Hayworth best-in-class dealership. Experience our 360 approach and discover the team, tools, and techniques required to navigate the complexity of your next workspace at BOS.com. If you have ideas, feedback, or would like to be featured on our show, please email podcast@BOS.com. Thank you for listening. This has been a Workspace digital production. If you're interested in launching a podcast at your organization, please email info@workspace.digital for a free consultation.